everyone, welcome to the OklaRoots YouTube channel. In today's video, we're going over what I would consider a basics. It's not so much like a basic like a sewing machine or anything like that. This is more of like a basic add-on to many projects. Today, we're gonna go over key fobs. Now, these little buggers, they seem so easy, and they are, yet they can also be some of the biggest headaches. Let me just show you the few that I've been making while I was trying these out. The nice thing about key fobs is you can really use any material with them. So you can use quilt cotton, you can use vinyl. On this one I have some cotton webbing. You can also use the nylon webbing. It's fantastic for whatever extras you have, whatever small cuts you have, without having to waste anything. And then we have these little key fobs on the end here. Now let me show you. These little key fobs look just like this. They have like a little handle, and a lot of times we'll put, you see a little keychain on there, and then on the inside they have like these little mouth. So there's little teeth on the top, and then it's flat on the bottom. Now, if you're just using quilt cotton and like some fusible fleece or batting with this, you're probably gonna be okay. However, when you start using the thicker cotton webbing, when you start using the vinyl, when you start beefing up these key fobs, you run into the problem where when you clamp this down, it looks great, but as soon as you pull on it quite a bit, it comes off. And that's where I was. I was making these and I was so excited. They looked so great, and then I would pull on them and it would pop right off, and it was extremely frustrating. So I took to social media. I took to Instagram and Facebook, and I asked everybody for advice. I got some advice that was like, just don't pull that hard on it, which is a great piece of advice. However, if you're making something like this for kids, it's not advice that will always be taken, right? So if you have a kiddo and you attach this to like their zipper on their backpack, this is now going to be the zipper pull on their backpack. And no matter what you do, this is what they're going to use, and they're going to yank it. They might even carry their backpack by this little handle if you put it on there. So at some point, a lot of weight is going to be on these, and you're going to be yanking this out, and it's going to be very frustrating when it pops out. Another piece of advice was just don't use thicker material. Only use, you know, quilt cotton, things like that, which is also great if that's all you want to use, and then you're in good shape here. You're in great shape, because the thinner the fabric is, the more those little teeth that I showed you can go through all of the layers and really puncture into it. Another piece of advice was to use something different. So there are other versions of these that have screws. So you clamp it down and then you screw it in, and then that screw will go through all the layers of material. That's also a great option. However, the whole reason I was playing with these key fobs is because I have two of these little bins full of key fobs, and I gotta do something with them. I gotta use them. So I want to master these little suckers so that they don't pop off. And I think we have figured that out. I think. So if you're new to the OklaRoots YouTube channel, please consider clicking subscribe down below. If at any point you like this video, please give it a like. Any questions, comments, shout outs, anything at all you want to say, leave them down in the comment section down below. If you have more suggestions for these key fobs, specifically for key fobs that have this setup right here, where you have the teeth and you have a flat edge and you have to clamp it down. Specifically for that, leave them down in the comments section. If you want to provide links to other types of key fobs, so for those of you who haven't purchased these yet, maybe there's a better option with screws or something like that, go ahead and provide links for that down as well. All the information you have for key fobs, just leave them down there. Just go through it. This will be a nice place to access all kinds of information if you want to do this project. All right, so let's get started working on these key fobs. Okay, so if you've seen my rivet press video where we go over this cutie patootie right here and all of the different attachments I have for it, you saw at the very end, I tried out this die set right here for the first time. Now this is a key fob die set. This is what it's for. It's for pressing these little suckers down. So you see this here, once you get the material in there, you put it in and you push it down. The nice thing about that is that when you push it down, you don't have any indentions. You see how smooth that is? So a lot of times people will use pliers to push that down, and it leaves dents. And a lot of you guys have said you did not like that. You didn't like the dents. The nice thing about this attachment for our cam snaps is that there's no dents. It's going to stay nice and smooth. Love that. So I know not everybody has a press. If you do have a press, definitely go grab this dye. I will have links for everything down below, and I'll have a link for my video where we talk about the press more as well if you're interested in what else you can do with it. So as great as the dye press is, that's just for making sure it's really flat and as close to the fabric as it can possibly get, as tight as it can possibly get. However, with thicker material, it still doesn't mean all of it's going to be caught, and it doesn't mean it's not going to pop out. So another suggestion that I was given was E6000 glue. Yes, this stuff is great. It's super strong. You got to let it cure. We'll go over it. But this, in combination with the dyes, was a winner. So what we're going to do is we're going to build two. We're going to build one of the smaller ones. This is a 3/4 of an inch piece. And then we're going to build a larger one, which is a 1 1/4 inch piece. We're going to use vinyl for both of them. And we're going to use quilt cotton for both of them. One of the quilt cotton pieces we will just interface with SF101. The other one we will interface with fusible fleece. I do love fusible fleece on these. So I'll show you these ones here. This is interfaced with fusible fleece. It has a really soft feel to it. And then on the inside is vinyl. I love scrappy projects. Most of you know that. And this is kind of the ultimate scrappy project because it doesn't require much at all. It is quick, it is easy, and if we can just get it to work so it doesn't pop out, it is also extremely useful. You can stick these on wristlets, lunchboxes, backpacks, keys, everything. You can use them everywhere. So we'll go over the sizes. You can see I have a lot of different sizes here. I do suggest you play around with the sizes of your wristlets. Some of these are very big, some of these are very small. This would be more like a keychain one. It's not going around my wrist, but it's a good one if you just want to use your fingers to hold onto your things. So first, let's talk about the skinnier key fob wristlet. This is a 3/4 inch key fob here. For this, I have a scrap of quilt cotton, I have a scrap of vinyl, and then I have a scrap of Pellon SF101. It's just a woven interfacing. The thread I'll be using is a Tex 35. You don't have to be that picky about thread here. Any thread will work. This is a smaller project. And the needle I'm using is a Schmetz 8012 Microtex needle. So the first things I want to do are fuse this scrap onto my fabric. So you can pre-cut these if you'd like, or you can fuse it first and then cut it. For my wristlet, I am going to be using a cut of material for everything is going to be cut at 1.5 inches wide by 10.5 inches long. That's a good, easy wristlet size. So that is this size right here. You can see I have pretty skinny wrists, so I can still fit my wrist through it. If you want to make it bigger, definitely do. You can go up to 15 inches if you'd like. So you can see here's a much longer one. I believe this one was about 16 inches long. You could also go nice and short. This one was just about 8 inches long. So lots of options here. But what I'm going to do first is I'm going to fuse my woven interfacing to my quilt cotton. You don't have to use quilt cotton. You can use vinyl for both edges. I am showing you how to make a two-toned key fob here, so we're going to be using 2 different pieces of material. If you don't want to do that, you don't have to. So I have my woven fabric nice and flat. Let me just make sure I have enough of it. So I'm going to be using this area right here. So let me take my cut of interfacing, there we go, and just fuse it down. Once I have it fused on the back, I'll also fuse it on the front. Just make sure you don't get your iron on the glue side of your woven interfacing, or else you're gonna have to clean it, and that's a pain. I just realized my vinyl is color changing vinyl. I just kind of stuck it down on the hot spot, and look at that. That's gonna be a fun wristlet. So now let's cut our material. So I need a cut from here that is 10.5 inches by 1.5 inch. So I can just line up my ruler so that I have 1.5 by 10.5. I get an idea of how that looks. And I'm just gonna chop it up. So I do 2 sides first. I'm gonna do 1 short side and 1 long side, pull that away. And then I'll move my ruler so I can line it up exactly where it needs to go. So 1.5 by 10.5. There we go. Now we'll just trim that down. All right, and there is this part ready to go. We still do have to fold this and press this some more, so don't put your iron away just yet, but let's put that to the side. And now let's cut down our vinyl. So just like that, 1.5 by 10.5, just find a space. All right, so I'll trim down one side, and I'll trim down the short side. And then I can just move my ruler over to line it up exactly. I accidentally cut this at 10 inches, so that's what we're gonna do now, 10 inches. Instead of 10.5, we'll do 10 inches. Let me trim this one down so it's also 10 inches. This is how scrappy things work, okay? You have a plan and then you adapt, and it's fine. There we go. All right, so now these are cut at 1.5 by 10 inches. Okay, so now what we want to do is flip them both over so we're looking at the wrong sides. Take your ruler, and since this is for a 3/4 of an inch fob, we want to go 3/4 of an inch. We want to find the midline. The midline is going to be 3/4 of an inch. That's why we cut this at 1.5 inches, because that's twice as wide as 3/4. So I've got an air erasing marker. Remember, I'm marking on the back side here. I'm just going to mark my lines, my midpoint lines, and do this for both pieces. All right, there we go. So now let's work on this quilt cotton piece here. I'm going to bring back my pressing mat and my iron. And what we're going to do is we're going to fold our quilt cotton wrong sides together so that the long edge comes up and meets that midpoint mark on the back side of our quilt cotton piece. Just be careful not to burn yourself. That steam, it can get you. So once you have one side done, go ahead and do the same thing with the other side. All right, there we go. So now for the vinyl piece, you don't want to press it. You could just fold it and use clips to hold the fold. However, I do suggest investing in some super sticky tape. This tape is so sticky, you do not want to sew over it, but you can sew next to it. So I'm going to take it and I'm going to run it right along that middle line, just right over it. And the goal here is that I won't end up sewing over it. You can see I'm not going all the way to the short edges either. I'm stopping before I get there, and then I'll trim it down. Okay, and then I can remove the paper from the tape. And now I can easily fold my vinyl wrong sides together, just like I did with my quilt cotton. Look at that. My fingers are apparently pretty warm right now because my vinyl's turning purple. And this tape, glue, all this stuff, it just makes things easier as long as you don't sew over it. If you do end up sewing over this tape, change your needle afterwards because it'll get pretty gummed up. There we go. So now both of these are 3/4 of an inch wide and 10 inches long. So now we're just going to take them both and lay them folded raw edges sides together. So it's just clean on the outside of both of these. And now you can use tape again here if you'd like. I'm just going to use clips, and you just try to center it. Naturally, one of these will be a little bit wider than the other. So do your best to kind of center them over one another. That happens just because of just human error. A lot of times people will try to do this so that one is slightly bigger than the other. For me, it's just a mistake, so I don't even have to try. Let's do the other side as well. All right, so now we have our pieces clipped together. Now we're going to top stitch along the raw edges and also the short edges at an 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. Okay, so once you have these top stitched together, you're going to decide which side is going to be the outside and which side is going to be the inside. Now, usually the side with the top thread, so for me that was this black side, that would be the outside, but when I fold this, the inside kind of pinches. My strap naturally wants to kind of fold this way, so whichever side, it's going to be fine. I think I actually am going to have the black side on the outside because that looks really cool. So before we install our little hardware to this, we're going to sew these together. We're going to sew these edges together just like we're going to have it in the end at a 1/4 inch or an 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. Okay, so now it's time to enlist the help of the rest of these things. So we're going to grab our key fob dies for our rivet press here. And we're just going to install those. And these are just pretty much 2 rectangles, just 2 very strong rectangles like that. Make sure they're lined up correctly. They're not off like this. They need to be parallel with one another. And then we're going to grab our E6000 glue. And then here is our hardware. So you can see when we wrap it around, it should fit. Give it a dry fit real quick. Make sure it fits there. So that looks good. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to add the E6000 glue to the flat side of my hardware, not where my prongs are. So to that flat side right there, just like that. And I'm also going to add it a little bit on the very edge of the material for my key fob. There we go. This stuff is stinky. So now I'm going to insert the raw edge of my key fob into the hardware for my key fob. And I finger press it down first. Now you might see glue seeping out. If you do, just grab some scrap material or grab paper towel, something to kind of clean it up. You want to keep this clean. So I'm just going to pinch it with my fingers. just to make sure I have it exactly where I want it. There we go. And now I'm going to insert it into my press, making sure it's the same direction as my dies, right? We don't want anything perpendicular to one another. And then once I have it figured out, I'm going to slowly press down. Once it's holding it, now I'll press it more firm. There we go. Now, once again, glue might be coming out, so let's clean it up. It's easy to clean up now. It's going to be harder to clean up later. So since I'm using polyester thread, I don't know if you can see, but there's a little bit of raw thread just hanging out over there. I can take a lighter and just very gently burn that. And now that thread tucks in. And so the big thing here is that we now want to let this sit overnight. So we want to let it sit for 24 hours at least. And that glue, this E6000 glue, is going to cure, and it's going to become so hard that we can't pull this out. And the reason I didn't add any of the glue to the side over here with the prongs is because since that is a hole, the glue just seeps right out of it, and it's a big old mess. And honestly, we don't really need it on the side with the prongs. The prongs are going into the material. It's the other side. It's the side that's smooth where we struggle. So with this combination of stitching the ends together, adding the glue, using a heavy-duty press, this should hold it. So now let's make another version. So for this next version, we're gonna make a 1 1/4 inch wide key fob. And again, it's just based on how wide your hardware is. Since I'm doing 2 pieces of fabric here, I'm going to cut 2 pieces of fabric, each that are twice as wide as my key fob. So they're gonna be 2 1/2 inches. And then once again, I'll do it by 10 or 10 1/2 inches, whichever one you like, or you can go bigger or smaller, you decide. But we want the fabric pieces to be twice as wide as our key fob, so that way we can fold them in half, put them together, it looks nice. And in this case, we're gonna use fusible fleece with our cotton woven instead of the SF101. This just gives it more of like a poofy, soft feel. Okay, so first things first, let's just get all the little wrinkles out of our quilt cotton. You'll notice I often use these scraps of quilt cotton as pressing cloths. So when I'm pressing something and I don't want my iron to touch it, I'll put this over it. But then I still use these in projects. Okay, so once we have this nice and flat, now we're gonna fuse it onto fusible fleece. And fusible fleece can be a little bit tricky. So with the fusible fleece, you wanna lay it so it's glue side up, that's the rough side. And you wanna lay your material right side up over it. You always want to fuse fusible fleece from the right side because it's just the best way for the heat and the steam to access that glue. If you fuse it from the back, a lot of times it just does not stick because it's so thick back here, it's hard for the steam and the heat to penetrate that glue so that it will melt to your material. But if you do it from the front side, it's easy. Now, this is actually on the packaging for fusible fleece, so it's right. You want to fuse from the front with hot heat and steam, and you want to keep your iron moving. Don't put your iron down in one spot. If you do that, if you have it just sit in one spot, what happens is as the glue contracts and melts and everything, it squishes up all your fabric and it's a mess. It looks so bad. But if you keep it moving with hot heat and steam, I've found that it keeps it very flat. So you just don't want to be in one spot for too long. And I'm putting pressure down and just kind of like stretching. I know this is like everything you're not supposed to do when like ironing quilt blocks, but there we go. Okay, so by kind of like pushing it down like that, it keeps it flat, which is what we want. Okay, so we got our quilt cotton all prepped and ready. So now we're going to cut a piece that is 10 1/2 or 10 inches by 2 1/2. So once again, I'm just going to use my ruler here and a rotary cutter. I'm going to start with 2 edges, one short edge and one long edge first. This way I get a nice clean corner to use with my ruler. And then I can just line this up, 10 1/2 inches, 2 1/2 inches. There we go. And now I'll cut the other 2 corners. All right, there's one piece ready to go. I'm going to do the same thing with my vinyl. Again, you don't have to use vinyl. You can use cotton webbing, you can use nylon webbing, you can use other quilt cotton. If you want to just use one piece of material, just multiply the width of this by 4. So instead of 2 1/2, this would be 5 inches. And then you would double fold it, like double fold binding. And then you could use that instead. There are a lot of options here. Okay, so we have these both prepped. Let's look at the back sides. And let's mark our midpoint line. That's 1 1/4 up from each of these long edges. Just like that. Okay, and so now you can press this with an iron if you'd like to hold it in place, but with fusible fleece, I find that's a little tricky. So once again, I'm gonna use my super sticky tape, and I'm gonna use it on both pieces this time. Again, I'm staying at least 1/2 of an inch away from the short edges, and I'm just running this right over that midpoint line. The nice thing about the tape too is that after I take the paper off, I can still see that line through the tape. So I'm gonna do this on the quilt cotton and also on the vinyl. And then I can just peel the paper off and then fold these up wrong sides together. And again, I'm making sure that that tape is in the very center so that I do not sew over it. So there is my quilt cotton piece all ready to go. Now I'm gonna do the same thing with my vinyl. All right, and then all we have to do is just put them back sides together so both side looks nice with no raw edges. Grab our clips and hold them together. The nice thing about this is even if they don't line up completely perfectly, even if one side is kind of overhanging the other side, because we folded this so that the raw edges are all the way in the center here, we know that no matter what, they're going to be hidden, right? A lot of times we get worried about this, like if we only folded them in 1/4 of an inch and then we're sewing, what if we don't catch it all the way and then the raw edge comes out? You're not going to have that problem by folding them in all the way to the center. So now let's take this to the sewing machine and just top stitch along all 4 edges at 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. All right, there we go. It's all top stitched together. So now decide which side you want to be the outside, which side you want to be the inside. I usually just fold them both and see which one wrinkles less on the inside. But I think actually the fusible fleece side, that's going to be a little bit softer. I mean, it really doesn't matter because you're going to touch both sides. So I'm going to have the fusible fleece side on the inside and the vinyl on the outside. And so what I'm going to do before we attach the hardware is we're going to just stitch down this raw edge right here with both of the ends tucked in together. And we're just going to stitch that down at 1/4 of an inch seam allowance. All right, time for the big guns. So I got my E6000 glue again. And once again, just like before, I'm going to apply it to the smooth side of my fob, not the side with the prongs. Okay, and then I'm also going to apply some on the edge of my fabric. Now this is much thicker than the other one was, so we'll see how this does, huh? There we go. So now we're just going to insert the end into our hardware. Make sure it all lines up and it's as far back as it can go. Try not to get the glue on your hands. So it's as far back as it can go, and then I pinch it with my fingers just a little bit. There we go. And now we can put this on our press, line it up, and then gently press it down. And then if you have any glue coming out anywhere, go ahead and wipe that down now. So now this one is done as well, and we're gonna let this sit overnight. All right, so there we go, key fobs. One of the quickest projects that's actually useful. And I think that this is such a great, it's a great project for everybody. People who've been sewing forever, they love making key fobs just as much as brand new sewists. But if you're brand new to working with vinyl, which I know a lot of you guys are, this is a great way to figure out what you're comfortable with. So if you're able to get scraps of vinyl, you can test it out on this project, see what your machine can work with, see how you feel about the needle, the thread, everything like that, before you have to commit to a big bag with a lot of vinyl. So as you can see, I'm a pretty big fan of these key fobs. I think adjusting the size is great. I personally really love these little ones. Because I feel like these are good for keys. I don't need a wristlet really with keys, but I would like a little keychain. So I think this is great. By using the press, by stitching the ends closed, and by using the E6000 glue, we've currently found that these do not pop out. So give it a try. Let me know what you think. I know that this seems like such a simple project, and it is. It's a very, very simple thing to make. But it's not really a simple thing to have for a long period of time, right? We can all make these pretty quickly, but then they pop out. They pop out of the hardware, and it's very frustrating. So far these have worked really well for us. Give them a try. Let me know what you think. So thank you so much for sewing with me today. I hope that this inspires you to go out and make a whole bunch of key fobs. You can even embroider on these. There's like thousands of things you can do with these things. Whatever you decide to make sure you let me know how it's going. If you're on social media and you post a photo, make sure you tag me. I'm at OklaRoots. I'm always excited to see what you guys are working on. I hope you're having a great day. Have a fantastic rest of your week. Get out there and make something. Bye, guys.